Japan, 1568. The Ashikaga shogunate, the dynasty that ruled for over 200 years, was collapsing. Warlords carved the nation into fiefdoms, and the emperor was a pawn. But in the chaos, a demon saw his chance. Oda Nobunaga. His victory over the once mighty Imagawa clan had turned the Oda clan into the strongest power in central Japan, and his next move would make him the power behind the throne. This is the story of how Oda Nobunaga began the unification of Japan. Firestorm of war, betrayal, and conquest. This. After destroying the Imagawa clan, Oda Nobunaga plotted to seize power over Japan. His next move was to place a new shogun in Kyoto. Fortune led Ashikaga Yoshiaki, the younger brother of Ashikaga Yoshiteru, the shogun murdered by the Miyoshi clan, to Oda Nobunaga. He had been driven into exile and forced to become a Buddhist monk after his brother assassination. Now he had came to Oda Nobunaga to ask for his aid. A bargain was struck. Oda Nobunaga and his armies would support the shogun against the Miyoshi clan, but the price was high. The Oda would rule in the shadows through the new shogun, but first they would have to deal with Miyoshi and their allies. Nobunaga's 30,000-strong army marched on Kyoto, but the Rokaku clan blocked his way. Chokoji Castle had to be stormed by the Oda army, but the Rokaku could not stop Oda Nobunaga, and castle after castle fell. The Rokaku clan's strength was swept sway, like the Imagawa before them. They fell before the Oda. With the Rokaku defeated, the road to Kyoto was open, and the Miyoshi clan were next. They could not hold Kyoto, and they were driven out. The last embers of the Miyoshi clan were extinguished a few years later. Oda Nobunaga now held Kyoto, and controlled the shogun. Yoshiaki was declared shogun, but Nobunaga ruled in the shadows. Ashikaga Yoshiaki was a shogun in name only. He wore silk robes and issued proclamations, but Oda Nobunaga ruled, and he hated it, but he could do nothing, for now. After appointing Ashikaga Yoshiaki as shogun, Oda Nobunaga demanded that the great lords of the land, the daimyo, come swear fealty to their new shogun. Asakura Yoshikaga, lord of the Asakura clan, refused to come to Kyoto. Oda Nobunaga declared that if the Asakura would not come to Kyoto, the Oda would come to Asakura. He raised an army and marched on the Asakura clan seat of Kanagasaki Castle. But his enemies were circling. His brother-in-law, Azai Nagamasa, turned on the Oda to honor his family's long alliance with the Asakura, along with the remnants of the Miyoshi and Rokaku clans. Their combined forces were able to force the Oda back. Oda Nobunaga barely escaped with his rear guard fighting a desperate defense. Led by Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a peasant that had risen high in the Oda clan due to his ruthlessness and ability to command men, the rear guard held just long enough for their lord to escape. Behind the new anti-Oda alliance, the newly installed Oda puppet shogun Asakura Yoshikaga, who had learned that being a great warrior had only led his brother to a glorious death, surrounded by his enemies. Yoshikaga plotted to bring down the Oda, and he had come so close to ridding himself of the demon shogun. But it was not to be. In 1570, at the Battle of Anagawa, the Oda faced the combined Asakura forces. Oda Nobunaga commanded the army personally. The most important of his vassals, a young man named Tokugawa Ieyasu, had led his army to join his lord. While the Oda and Azai fought on the right flank, the Tokugawa and Asakura fought on the left. Across the battlefield, Oda Nobunaga faced his brother-in-law, Azai Nagamasa. Their forces were evenly matched, and the battle descended into a brutal melee. Even with more men, the Oda could not break through the disciplined Azai ranks. However, on the left flank, Tokugawa Ieyasu and his men broke the Asakura lines and then hit the Azai in the flank. The battle was over. The Azai-Asakura alliance was finished, and their armies shattered. It would take a few more years for the Oda to finish off the Azai-Asakura clans. But Oda Nobunaga would not rest until his enemies were dead. In 1573, Oda Nobunaga besieged his brother-in-law Azai Nagamasa in Odani Castle. Azai Nagamasa committed seppuku as Oda's sister Oichi, and her 3 daughters were taken home. But there was no mercy from Oda Nobunaga for his infant nephew, Azai Manpukumaru, and his brother-in-law's heir. He had his retainer Toyotomi Hideyoshi to execute the boy and put his head on a pike. His sister was never told the fate of her infant son. Also, in 1573, Asakura Yoshikage was trapped in a temple by the Tokugawa, and he committed seppuku rather than be captured. His head was delivered to Oda Nobunaga by Tokugawa Ieyasu. It was rumored that Oda Nobunaga had the heads of Azai Nagamasa and Asakura Yoshikage lacquered for use as drinking cups. But these lacquered skulls were never found, and it remains a rumor. Did the demon shogun have a collection of the lacquered skulls of his defeated enemies that he used as drinking cups? The answer has been lost to history. Finally, in 1573, the puppet shogun Ashikaga Yoshiaki found a new ally against the Oda. The Takeda clan was the mightiest individual clan in all of Japan, and their lord Takeda Shingen was battle-hardened and ruthless. He had ruled his clan for decades, and waged a near-endless series of wars to expand his domains. His armies were known for their cavalry and rapid maneuvers and attacks. He had benefited from the rise of the Oda by destroying the remnants of the Imagawa clan and seized their territory in 1569. By 1573, Takeda Shingen was the only remaining lord in Japan with the strength, influence, and ability to contest mastery of Japan with Oda Nobunaga. With the secret blessing of the shogun, the Takeda attacked. Their first target was Oda Nobunaga's most important vassal, the young Tokugawa Ieyasu, who had won the Battle of Anagawa for his lord 3 years before. Their armies met the Battle of Mikatagahara, where the Tokugawa, with Oda reinforcements, sat on a high plain and blocked the road deeper into their territory. Tokugawa Ieyasu was badly outnumbered, but he had an ace up his sleeve. Firearms bought from the Portuguese and now manufactured in Japan were considered a novelty. Tokugawa Ieyasu planned to change that. While his plan was sound, the choice of the battlefield was a mistake, and he underestimated the cunning Takeda Shingen. At the Battle of Mikatagahara, Tokugawa arquebusiers started firing at the Takeda cavalry. Rather than charge the Tokugawa lines, the Takeda cavalry maneuvered and attacked the flanks. Wave after wave of Takeda cavalry outmaneuvered the outnumbered Tokugawa despite their guns and routed their army. Tokugawa Ieyasu placed his golden fan standard at the top of the hill behind his army and tried to rally his men to his banner. It was in vain. As his men died around him, Ieyasu prepared to meet his end. His vassals begged their lord to flee, and finally Ieyasu listened to reason. His last retainers lead a final charge into the Takeda host and fought to the end to give their lord a chance to flee. Tokugawa Ieyasu escaped with 5 men back to Hamamatsu Castle. Thousands were dead, and his army shattered. The defeat was total. But Tokugawa Ieyasu was not finished. He gathered a few hundred survivors and ordered them to attack the Takeda camp that night. The Takeda beat back the attack, but the next morning, they retreated. They had won a great victory, but they were on enemy territory, and the massive Oda army was surely on its way to reinforce the Tokugawa. Had they faced the first of those reinforcements last night? Rather than press their luck, they retreated back home, but they had let Tokugawa Ieyasu escape. Next, the Takeda targeted Noda Castle held by the Tokugawa clan to open the road to Kyoto and the shogun. Once the Takeda had the Kyoto and the shogun, they could declare Oda Nobunaga a rebel and compel the clans that had been sitting out of the war into the field against them. The Takeda besieged the Noda castle for months before the garrison accepted the terms of their surrender. Takeda Shingen led his retainers to accept the garrison's surrender, and a sniper shot him. The Takeda massacred the treacherous garrison, but Takeda Shingen died of his wounds. The leadership of the Takeda clan fell to his son Takeda Katsuyori, but the cunning and ruthless Takeda Shingen was gone, and Takeda Katsuyori was not his father. In 1575, Takeda Katsuyori would lead the Takeda army against the Oda at the Battle of Nagashino, where Oda Nobunaga and Tokugawa Ieyasu would employ the same plan of massed firearms behind trenches and palisades that had failed the Tokugawa 3 years before. However, this time the Oda and Tokugawa were not outnumbered, and Takeda Katsuyori ignored the threat of massed firearms. Rather than try to outmaneuver the enemy, the Takeda charged the massed ranks of gunners head-on. In an hour, the elite Takeda cavalry was shot to pieces, and the Takeda army was destroyed. There was no one left that could stop stood between Oda Nobunaga and mastery of all of Japan. It would take a few more years for Oda Nobunaga to destroy the Takeda, but in 1582, the last of the Takeda were hunted down. Abandoned by most of his retainers and trapped by the Oda, Takeda Katsuyori and his wife committed seppuku. Their last loyal 41 retainers charged the Oda army and died in the final last stand of the Takeda clan. Among them, the 16-year-old Takeda Nobukatsu, now lord of the Takeda clan. By 1575, Oda Nobunaga stood unchallenged in central Japan, and the power of the Oda clan threatened to sweep over all of Japan. But first, he had to face Iko-Iki. They were Buddhist warrior monks that denounced the demon shogun and gathered their strength to face the tyranny of the Oda. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit like and follow us for more stories from Japan's epic history of warriors and warlords.